Yeah, sure. Want to start?
Sir, one second, sir. Yes, sir. We are on live, sir. You can go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. So today the session is about hyper-personalization and customer engagement. So we'll spend the next 45 minutes talking about different aspects. And what we'll do is first, let's understand the two words in this sentence, hyper-personalization and customer engagement. So I think customer engagement is something that almost everyone kind of has an understanding of what it means. But I'm going to actually talk about it in a very specific context. So I'm actually going to use a definition, which is essentially focuses on the objective of customer engagement or engaging with the customer. At the end of the day, when a business is trying to engage with a customer, they're essentially trying to ensure that that customer, one, buys their product, and not just buys it once, but buys it multiple times, and stays loyal with the brand, stays loyal with the business, right? And it also needs to be something which is a mutually beneficial relationship. So a customer will stay with you only when they see a benefit in doing so. So customer engagement is all about really creating that mutually beneficial relationship, right? And in the process, making money for the organization. So that's really the objective of customer engagement, right? Now, in order to engage with a customer, there are many things one needs to do, right? So let's look at it in a certain structured manner. And something that I've seen work for me and something that has worked for my clients also is using the whole concept of communication and talking about customer engagement using the 5 Ws, right? Now, the 5 Ws are, and we'll go through each of them shortly, right? So the first one is who. I mean, you may have millions of customers, you may have 10 customers, 50 customers, hundreds of thousands, but at any point in time when you're trying to engage with a customer, you as an organization, as a brand, need to figure out who is the customer that I need to engage with at that moment, right? So it's really figuring out which is the customer to target at that point in time. The next one is, once you have decided which customer, you also need to know what are you going to engage the customer for, right? There must be a reason why you want to engage with them. So there is a reason to talk to the customer, and talk here is loosely used for different kinds of engagement, whether it is sending out a message to them, could be in-store conversation, could be online conversation, could be different kinds of conversation and transaction, right? So you know the customer that you want to talk to, you know why you want to talk to. Now you also need to figure out what's the best channel to talk to, where, the location, right? Location could be online, location could be in-store, location could be through an SMS, through a WhatsApp channel, through email, through a video conferencing, could be multiple ways in which you engage with the customer, right? Or multiple channels that you may use. So that's really the third W, which is the fourth one is the most important thing, right? At some level. Once you know the customer, once you know why you want to talk to them, you've also decided on the channel you want to use, you need to figure out what are you going to talk to them about. And it's all about personalized communication. And this is where the content comes into play, right? And really ensuring that the conversation you're having with the customer resonates with the customer. And when I say conversation, it could be a transaction as well, right? And this is the fourth W in the 5 W engagement. And the final one is when, right? So you got who, why, where, what, and when. So it's not like you want to talk to your customer. I mean, it may not make sense to talk to your customer any time of the day. So it's best that you talk to the customer when it's the best day and time, right? So these are the 5 Ws of customer engagement. And this framework has really worked well in my own with various clients, right? So customer engagement is really all about the 5 Ws, right? So that's one piece of the phrase that or the topic, right? The second piece is hyper-personalization. Hyper-personalization is fairly straightforward conceptually, right? Essentially, what you want to do is, among all the thousands and thousands of customers you have, you want to make sure that every customer, when they interact with you as an organization, as a brand, have an individualized experience. So they feel and they actually sense that you are actually talking to them. You are listening to them, right? You're engaging with them rather than saying that, hey, you are just one of the many, right? So how do you create that individualized experience? And that is what personalized or hyper-personalized engagement is all about, right? Or hyper-personalization is all about. So what we'll do is in the next few set of slides, instead of talking about how you get there, I want to show you some examples of how it is different in different scenarios, right? And many of the things that you see here are also applicable in what's the offline world. And I will refer to those as we go along, right? So the first one is really about that you as a brand have an application, right? A mobile application. And you also have notifications, right? So you could potentially send out a notification to every customer. Typically, what you see is many brands or many organizations, what they do is they send out the same message to every customer that they have, right? I mean, they could say, hey, we have an offer going on or a sale going on, 30% off and off. Whereas in a scenario where you're talking about hyper-personalization, every customer will get a different notification. The content of the notification is very different. The time at which it is sent to the customer is very different, right? And if you look at the pictures on the screen, it's one notification which actually has 4 cards, right? It's a app notification which a Rolodex, right? Or card deck, right? Different products that you are trying to talk about with the customer, right? And these products are nothing but these are all personalized for these 4 images that you see, and including the message that you see, right, will all be customized and personalized to a customer. Right? So that's really this is one use case or one example of hyper-personalization. So you will see the message as is directly addressing the customer by their name. It's talking about how the 5 products that were picked by the brand or the brand, right, for that specific customer, right? So imagine you have an inventory or you have a product catalog of 100,000. I mean, something like all these online stores do have. You pick 5, very 5 specific for that customer. So that's really hyper-personalization, right? So this is one example. This is in context of app notification. Another one is where you are actually sending out a WhatsApp message, right? Now, in this WhatsApp message, if you look at this specific one, you will see the message is fairly straightforward, right? It's saying, "Dear Swati, Swati, you've already greeting the person by their name." So they already see a connect with the brand instead of saying, "Dear customer," which is like could be anyone. So you're very focused. You're talking to the customer. And what you have done, right? Since you're talking about WhatsApp, what you have done, you have said that, hey, I've actually picked 4 products for you, right? Which I believe is something that you would be interested in. And here is a link to that. So imagine a brand is sending out thousands and thousands, sometimes even lakhs of messages to their WhatsApp messages to their customers, sending out message to lakhs of their customers, WhatsApp messages. Each of them has an individualized link, right? And this is shortened, of course. And what that means is you click on this link and you landing page, right? Wherein you see what has been recommended for them, right? I know this example is in the context of a grocery chain, but it is very much applicable across different industries, right? So this is something, and grocery is something that we all can, and that's the reason I've taken this example as well, or examples on grocery chains. We'll see some examples on apparels as well. Okay, this is the one on apparel, right? Here again, here it's an SMS. Remember with SMS, of course, now you have smart SMS and all. Even with SMS, it's very difficult to show images and all that. Yeah, you can show some emojis right in the message. But other than that, so one way to really create an impact for the customer is give them a message, but also provide them with a link, right? Let me just get the pointer here. So also give them a link. And when they click on the link, it actually takes them to a page wherein the product selection is all personalized for that individual. So it's all coming from a recommendation system, a product recommendation system, and we'll talk about how we actually do that. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is actually part of a product that we built, right? It's called SOLUS. So that's why you see the logo on the top right. Right. So this is an output that comes from the system like SOLUS, or in this case, specifically SOLUS. Here is another example. There's a different customer, they get a different product page, So essentially they're getting this URL here. I mean, people are familiar with bit.ly, but it's really a shortened URL. You click on that and it takes you to a particular page, product details page. The way it is done is you don't actually have to explicitly log in to the site. You click on that line, it will take you to the page, right? This is another interesting scenario where instead of saying that I'm recommending many products to you and all, you're actually starting with the brand's focus or the business focus is, I want to sell a particular product. So in this context, I've selected the product. Now I'm actually going to go and find out all the customers for whom that product may make sense. Right, so it's just a reverse, but even there, in a way, hyper-personalizing the message that you're giving to the customer. Right. Here is another one. These are the earlier example I showed you. I just talked about one, but if you look at the different kinds of messages, right, that are being sent, the engaging with each of the customer is very different. You're not sending out a mass campaign, which is what typically you see. Whereas in order to really engage with the customer, really get the attention of your customer and really see that they come and shop or they come and buy or they do what you want them to do or you're able to nudge them to do that, these kind of personalized messages go a very long way, right? So you will see from the same system, these many messages, and I believe all these messages sent out on the same day at the same time or at different times to different customers, right? So the text is different for each of them. The link you see here, which are hyper-personalized. So when a customer gets this message, they click on that link, it will take them either in the app, it will point to a deep link and it will actually open the product page or the respective target page on the app or in a browser, either one of them, right? I mean, this is an email. Some things you will notice that whether you use SMS, whether you use WhatsApp, and in this case it's an emailer, the recommendations are there. And in all scenarios, the message is very personalized. Okay, and the not just starts with the name, but also it's about referring to some of the actions or some of the prior engagements that the customer may have had with the brand. So that's all captured in the way the communication is crafted and sent to the customer. Okay. I mean, this is just an extension of that. Typically, whenever you log into any website, and especially an e-commerce website, I mean, there are some websites where you will see that, hey, you know, at the top, it talks about certain things that have been picked for you, right? Certain recommendations from the brand, right? Or if you open Swiggy or Zomato, any of them, you will very often, many times find that, hey, it would say, here are a few restaurants that we have picked for you, many things, right? So they keep saying. So similarly, these are all aspects of creating personalized experience, which is really about ensuring that every individual customer is treated different brand. Now, this is nothing new. This has been going on for ages. I mean, of course, what has the last, I would say, 8 to 10 years is really the advance of technology and the advance in the field of data science and how AI and ML and all of those things have become far more accessible and cheaper to implement. So all of those things have come together, and that is why you see a lot more of these days. Of course, going digital helps them tremendously. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about how we actually get some of these things or get to these end outputs. So this is another place where a customer has logged into the page. So here you see recommendations specially curated for you, right? The brand or the system that is there, the hyper-personalization system, has identified the products that you may want to be most likely to buy, right? Or you may be interested in. What you see at the bottom here is what people like you are buying. I mean, at some level, if you think about it, you buy stuff because you need them, right? Or you're also buying stuff because you want them. So this need and want is created by multiple external factors and internal factors, right? And all of those aspects are leveraged by a system like SOLUS to come up with recommendations. So it's also, while SOLUS or any hyper-personalization system would look at your own past behavior and recommend basis that, or talk about the next action basis that, or will try to look at what others similar to you, or, I mean, there are different ways, right? I mean, you would see it in Amazon, you would see it in Flipkart, where sometimes you see those banners which says, hey, 20,000 other people have bought this product, right, in your vicinity. I mean, it happens so more in Swiggy and all, where you see that 1,200 more other people have ordered from this restaurant in the last 7 days, right? So all these are signals and nudges to, in a way, convince you to actually do that transaction, right? And when you look at many of them, they're very hyper-personalized. They're personalized to your taste. They're personalized to your wants and needs. And many of them may not have been identified by or explicitly mentioned by you. So a lot of them are also unsaid needs and wants, which a lot of these systems are trying to extract from the data that is already there. Okay. I mean, here is another interesting scenario. You know, I as a customer went onto that site, and then I said, oh, you know, let me look at strawberries. So I click on that page on strawberry. So this page is typically called a product details page. When almost all the websites have. Now this provides details of the product, but what you see at the bottom, which says people who buy this also buy these other products. So this is again another way of expanding your business with the customer without being intrusive, right? So this is another thing that you would see in a lot of e-commerce sites, especially sites like Amazon and Flipkart and some of the bigger ones, big basket, right? So this is another way of hyper-personalizing the experience, or making the experience individual for the individual. Now, we looked at grocery, we looked at some of them in the, I would say, apparel. I mean, this is true even in a scenario like investments, right? Mutual fund investments, right? Mutual fund investment engagement with the customer doesn't need to be very bland, right? And regulations and all, but within the framework of the regulations and the rules, you can still create conversations with the customers which are very hyper personalized. So if you look at each of these, right? So all these areas which are blocked, I mean, which are those rectangular blocks, right, around them. These are all dynamic content based on the individual that the system is trying to engage with, right? So all of them will be different based on what the customer has done in the past, and there are many other algorithms that are used, and I will briefly touch upon them as we go. So I wanted to start by showing you some examples of the outputs of a hyper-personalization system, or how it manifests and how a user actually sees it, right? Now let's actually get into how can you get to this outcome or this output, right? So we'll talk about how we can get there. So if you look at hyper-personalization through the customer journey, right? So there are many places where you can actually provide this individualized experience. One most simple or most obvious one, I wouldn't say most obvious, is custom and relevant messaging. So everything that you saw, the SMS, the WhatsApp, all the messages that you're sending, relevant for the customer, they need to be custom for every individual. So that's really very important when you say that you want to have an hyper-personalized engagement, right? Unique landing pages. Instead of saying, if I'm just taking names, if Ashish comes to the website and Narasimha comes to the website, it shouldn't be the same thing, right? It should actually be different for each of them based on, you know, their own and many other aspects, right? Their past purchase behavior, past online browsing behavior, all of that stuff. Recommendation engines. I mean, no hyper-personalization is complete without having a recommendation engine. Now, the recommendation engines are can give you recommendations for products, can give you recommendations for offers, could be a combination of the two, can be also recommendations about just the messages, the kind of conversations you need to have with the customer, right? So there are different kinds of recommendation engine. Omni-channel customer service, this is another. Now, I'm sure many of us have faced this scenario where, I need to engage with a customer service phone, or I'm on a WhatsApp, I'm talking to someone, it gets disconnected. I try to call them back again, and then the whole needs to be repeated, right? That's not a great experience. In a hyper-personalized scenario, what would be great, fine, the line got cut or whatever it is, but they're able to actually call back, and they already have the history of the conversation that has happened. And not just that, they actually have a history of everything else that went around, so that they could have a meaningful conversation with me as a customer. So that's what omni-channel customer service is all about. Another place where a lot of hyper-personalization can, and these days there are a lot of things going on there, chatbot, right? Different channels being used, pricing and offers. Fine. Of course, there is a practical limitation here, but there is nothing that stops someone from looking at providing different offers or different discounts to different customers based on their propensity to buy, or they're based on looking at their past transaction, understanding what is the price point they buy at. So there are different things that can be done, and all of these will help you in giving your customers an individualized experience. Pre-populated applications. I mean, this is very common. I mean, this is, although a lot of it is rule-based still, now you see a lot more applications where if they are using more, say, ML, AI, intelligence, I mean, predictive algorithms to fill up the applications. And real-time product knowledge, right? Hey, I'm on a website, I'm trying to do something, or right, or I am geolocation, right? So I am actually at some place in the town based on my geolocation. Hey, there could be pops up saying that, hey, here is a store where there is a X amount percentage discount on a particular product. Now, that product was selected by the system, knowing what would your want or need be at that point in time, right? But there's a real-time component to it, which is the notification is real-time. So a lot of these things you and we, all of us as an individual, experience at some point or the other with different systems, right? And everyone's trying to do that in their own way. But these are some of the aspects that actually are opportunities where you can hyper-personalize or create an experience for the individual personal to them. Okay. Now let's talk about what does it take to get all these things done. Okay. All right. So if you think about getting to hyper-personalization, there are really 4 aspects. Okay. First, most important thing is you need to get a lot of micro decisions right. Okay. And you need to get it. I mean, when I say a lot of micro decisions, at any point in time, you need to decide for yourself, out of the thousands of products I have, which product or which 2 products or which 10 products should I be pitching to a customer, right? Or sending an as an offer, or which offer should I send to the customer, right? Should I even talk in time, right? Timing is important. Trigger is all about which customer. Tonality is about the message itself, the content of the message. Should it be humorous or should it be very formal? All those, because the brand guidelines and different other aspects will come into play. But you really need to take a lot of micro decisions, right? So in order to get to hyper-personalization, the first thing is to get to, can you please mute yourself if you're not talking? So it's all about getting those micro decisions right. Okay? Now imagine you need to do this for every customer that you have. So if you think about a grocery chain, let's say like Big Basket, with 0.5 crore customers or 2 crores, which means you need to take these micro decisions for each and every customer, right? Now, Next comes a real challenge. You need to take these micro decisions and just keep looking at the complexity that's getting added. You need to do it for every customer, and you need to do it at a scale and speed. You're talking about millisecond turnaround in real time scenario. You're talking about millions of customers. You're talking about data that is coming in from online, offline. You also need to push out the both those channels, that is online and offline. And last but not least, in this scenario, data is never uniform. There will be customers for whom you have a lot of data. There will be customers for whom you don't have any data, right? Or you have very little data or sparse data. So how do you handle both those scenarios, right? Rich data. So that you ensure that your solution, your hyper-personalization strategy and implementation complete in all respects. Now, while all these three are very critical, you cannot achieve hyper-personalization if you don't have a learning system. Okay? Because you need to learn from every action and reaction of the customer. That's the only way you will be able to have a very meaningful engagement with the customer. So you need that is continuously learning, right? So that's going to be very critical. Okay. So in the next slide, I'm just going to talk about, for a very brief moment, about the product SOLUS itself, and then get into some of the internals of the product and also the techniques and other things that one could use for.
Mute your mic. Kashinathan, mute your mic.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir. All right. So we built SOLUS as a system of intelligence. Now, this is something that you would have heard many a time. Typically, most of the systems which talk about artificial intelligence and all that are systems of intelligence, right? So what does the system of intelligence do? It essentially takes data from what are known as systems of records. Systems of records are the systems where you're capturing the data, right, from other sources, right? Whether it is your feedback response kind of a mechanism, you're doing a survey, or you have a Salesforce application, or you have warehouse management application, or you have a data warehouse. CDP is nothing but a customer data platform, right? So different systems of record. So a system of intelligence gets the data from systems of record. It does its magic. And for now, I'm just going to say magic, but I'll explain what that means, right? And then it does few things, okay? One is it provides decisions, essentially drives what the systems of engagement are going to do, right? Whether it is web, email, mobile, store, chat, application, all of that, right? The system of intelligence is essentially telling your system of engagement what to do. So systems of engagement are nothing but a channel for a system of intelligence to engage the customer, right? And then system of intelligence also collects the response from these systems of engagement. Now, it's possible that it may directly collect from systems of engagement, or it may go through systems of record. Those are all, but fundamentally, the responses are very critical for a system of intelligence. If you remember in the previous slide, I mentioned that it needs to be a system that is continuously learning. A learning system works only when it knows how a customer has responded to a event, right? That either you have forced the event upon the someone else has or something else has. But the system of intelligence needs to understand that response, right? And also then finally provides the same intelligence that it is using to drive these decisions back to system of, because in an enterprise, right, intelligence needs to be shared across the systems for any system to be really effective. So if this intelligence is just localized, but not of that much use. But if the same intelligence can be shared across the enterprise, it really has a multiplier effect on everything that the enterprise does. Okay. So now what we'll do is we will talk about this entire cycle of intelligence response, right, in the next set of slides. So the first activity to get to, it's really about creating what we call a single view of a customer. Okay. Now, what does it mean? What it means is you are getting data from multiple sources. We talked about it in the previous diagram, previous slide, where we say system of records. So in all those systems, there is customers, right? Okay. So the first step is to really get all that data, then create what we call as single view of customer. Now, what does the single view contain? The single view essentially contains variables, okay, which help you capture the behavior of the customer. I mean, it's not just demographic. There are multiple sets of variables, as you can see there. Demographic, transaction, which is based on the purchase history, the purchases that the customer has done. Loyalty, if the brand has a loyalty program, then you could have loyalty related information. You could have app, online browsing behavior, all of that, right, which gives you a lot of information about pre-purchase. You could have feedbacks, location. So all of these are variables that you create, and they help you capture the behavior of a customer, right? Now, in any, I mean, this seems very typical of building any analytical system, any intelligence system. It's all about, first thing is to get the data and create the features, create the variables. You can use different terminology there, but something that will encapsulate and capture the behavior of the customer. So this is the first step that is done in any system of intelligence. And believe me, if this foundation is not created properly, everything else you get is in garbage out, right? So lot of the skills needed to do this is business understanding. Okay, domain knowledge is very critical in this scenario, right? So that's why you need folks from different disciplines to come together and help you in creating this. Okay, done that. Once you've created a single view of customer, the next set of things is really about building the recommendation, right? How do you get to building the recommendations? So in this previous slide, we got the data, we created single view of customer. Now, what do we do with it? Using that data and that single view of customer, it's time that we actually think about finding out what products, what offers should I be recommending to the customer, right? So there are multiple algorithms, different things that can be done. And what we will do is we will go through each one of them in a little bit of a detail and go through the different algorithms that can be used. I mean, this is an exhaustive set, but this is something that we have currently implemented in SOLUS, and we continue multiple algorithms for product recommendations, right? So the first one is what's called genome matching. So what is it? So what we do is we actually create a customer genome. Now, what is a customer genome? Earlier, I talked about creating a single view of customer. Excuse me. I talked about creating a single view of customer, right? Single view of customer is capturing the behavior of the customer, right? Now, if the manner in which the behavior is captured, those variables, they're not necessarily that amenable to applying certain algorithms, right? So for example, if I have a 1 crore database of customers, if I want to know for each customer 10 other customers who are very similar to them, okay? And now if I use something like the single view of customer, which is, which has a certain construct to where you have different fields which are strings, you have fields which are numbers, floats, lists, all kinds of stuff, and some of them are continuous variables, right? You really cannot apply a lot of the algorithms. It becomes very cumbersome. It becomes very tedious, extremely expensive in terms of processing power. So the best thing to do is convert those variables into a language, into a form that the computer very easily understands, which is right? A set of stream of zeros and ones. So customer genome is nothing but a transformation of the single view of customers into a stream of zeros and ones, okay? Where every 0 and 1 essentially represents a particular value. So for example, if I have a variable which says color, right? Favorite color. I'm just taking example, favorite color. Now I could have 100 different colors in my variable, levels, variable values. How do I represent them as genome? It will actually be 100 different zeros and ones here. So the first placeholder will say whether it's blue, color is blue. If it is 1, it means yes, color is blue. It means no, favorite color is not blue for that customer. So a customer genome is created for every customer in the database, right? Once you have done that, then what we do is we actually find similar customers. Now, this is very different than segmentation and other techniques where you're talking about identifying common behaviors across large number of customers. Here you're saying, I'm going to first one customer, which is Gaurav Gupta, as an example. Then I'm going to look at that Gaurav Gupta's genome and look at the genome of all the other 1 crore minus 1 customers I have in the database, and how many of them are similar to this. The algorithm we use here is very simple. It's cosine similarity, right? Many of you would be aware of it. So that's the algorithm we are using, but one could use many others as well, like Manhattan distance, and there are different ways of doing that. But essentially, the idea is for every customer, you top 10, top 50 other customers within the large database who look very similar, right? That. Okay. The reason you do that is, so once you've done the matching, you can then recommend products based on matching customers, right? So the whole idea is that Gaurav Gupta has done certain purchases, he has shown certain behavior, but there are these other 4 customers here who have this match, right, in the G. So let me find out what these customers are buying, right, and use that information to recommend that customer, that to Gaurav Gupta. So that's really the whole concept of customer matching. I mean, genome is there because it actually helps us do this much faster. It enables you to do those computations. Think about it. When you're talking about 1 crore customer data set, you're actually talking about a matrix. I mean, computation of 1 crore by 1 crore. Just look at the number of computations that needs to be done, right? So that's why putting that in that binary string really helps. That is really the first algorithm that I talked about, is about learning from similar customers. The second, preference vector, this is actually what you're doing is, this is about the customer himself or herself. Understanding the customer's preferences. So you can use the genome or you can use the SVOC for the customer from that, and looking at the SVOC or the genome at different points for the customer, and looking at the change in those, you are able to create a preference vector for the what are the things they prefer. So for example, if it is an apparel brand, you could potentially say that, the first signal is the first transaction. In first transaction, what Gaurav Gupta has shown is that, hey, he likes brand A, he likes blue color, he likes a shirt, because maybe of the purchases he or she, that he has done. In the second transaction, he has done different purchases. So when I combine these two, I can get a preference vector which tells me what are the preferences of that customer. He's actually gone to a product page and browsed it. That's another signal. So with every signal, and a signal is nothing but an event, right, that has been done by Gaurav Gupta, event associated with Gaurav Gupta or the customer, you capture the behaviors and then see how it is progressing. Okay. And the important thing about preference vector is, you never reduce the preference value to 0 for any. Okay. This helps you, I mean, especially when you start using machine learning algorithms, any kind of learning algorithms, you should always keep in mind that you should never shut out any option, right? I mean, that's very critical. You should never shut out any option, right, when you're talking about a learning system. Because at some point later, you may want to try that option. Okay? So never shut out. You may reduce the value or the weightage for that option, but never bring it down to 0. Okay? But this is something that we have seen very well. Okay? So what this means is that by using these kind of algorithms, the preference vector, what are you doing? Okay, there are 3 things that you need to do. One second. Okay, yeah.
So one is you need to understand how quickly preferences. Now, if a customer is engaged a lot with the brand in different ways, you actually get multiple signals, so it will be easier to learn. So one of the things to track is learning rate. Second thing to track is the forgetting rate, right? Remember, I mean, if you have a customer who's been with you for 10 years, it's not necessary that you retain all the 10 years data, right? All the 10 years signal. Figure out what is your forgetting rate going to be. It may not necessarily be based on the time, it could be based on different others, right? And last but not least is, should we always rely on the preference of the individual, or should we look at a cohort? So remember, I talked about sparse data versus rich data earlier. So in sparse data scenarios where the customer has not given you that many signals, be better off, right, using the cohort that the customer belongs to. Use that for product recommendations. So this is second algorithm that is something that is implemented, right? Then of course, then you have something a different scenario really about understanding the product itself that have been bought. In the previous one, we were talking about customers, where the center was customer. Here we're talking about products. So essentially, it's called IBCF, that is item-based collaborative filtering. Essentially, you're saying that you're looking at association between products. So things like, okay, hey, a person who's bought a trouser, what are the other products that they have bought? Or whenever there's a trouser bought, what are the other products that are being bought? So use that as a driver for recommending products to the customer. Okay. Finally, trending. I mean, trending has various flavors, right? Trending among all customers. Just looking at the entire customer base and finding out what are the products trending. Now, trending could be based on the volume of the sales, can be based on the value of the sales and all of that. Or trending in location, right? Because there's a lot of seasonality to some. I mean, for example, if about the months of December in apparel, hey, North India is cold, so the product there or trending there will be very different than the ones in South India, right? I'm just using a very generic statement. I know some places in South India may still be colder, right? Or trending a certain period of time, right, between 6 and 8, right? So trending itself, it's a class of algorithms in trending. Could be for all customer, could be by time, right? So you saw 3 different kinds of algorithms that can be used to identify product recommendations. Now, one of the things is each of them gives you recommendation based on a certain principle, right? Genome Match gives you based on the principle that let me find out or learn from similar customers. Preference based is based on my A customer's own preferences. IBCF is based on product association. Then you have trending, you have popular, trending and location. Each of them is giving you a different kind of recommendation. What we have done, and this is something that is not just true for SOLUS itself, but there are many use cases where you find that you may have multiple algorithms. Each of them is giving you a particular prediction, right, or an inference. And what you then do is you actually create another algorithm, and in this case, we call it the hybridizer. But essentially, what the hybridizer does is it takes the output from each of these algorithms and then stack ranks them. Okay, and this stack ranking itself is done using logistic regression. Okay, so what you're saying is you're not only saying that, hey, I have algorithms for finding out recommendations for every customer, right? But importantly, an algorithm which figures out which of these underlying algorithms actually for a customer at that point in time. And remember, this is something, all these algorithms are running customer all the time. So it is not those scenario where it is run once, run all the time. And it's fairly compute intensive, but the really significant. And I'll talk about the benefits towards the end of the session, right? So this is recommendation can be, I mean, for customers, right? The next thing which is important is now that you have the recommend, right? what you also want to do, and this, okay, I'll take one more case, which is really more cases. One is for something like a grocery chain, right? So if you are talking about the groceries, or if you're talking about scenarios where there's an opportunity to repeat purchase of the same item again and again, right? Then why do you even need to have the customer come and kind of say, hey, I want product again, right? I mean, in grocery, we all know there is a certain pattern, right? So why not create a smart basket, right? So there's another algorithm, another way of looking at recommending products. So you actually create a basket, right? So the simple way is you go to your app, there is a smart basket there, which already has populated items that the system feels you will most likely buy. You just have to go and say, okay, I want to buy this, check. So you're not even searching for anything. It's already pre-populated. You just say yes or no, and it's done. Right? So that's another one. And the other kind of recommendation, which is not, but it's really on the offer, right? Why is it that two customers should get the same offer? Why can't we tweak the offers for each of the customer based on their purchase pattern, their behavior, right? Their propensity to buy based on certain pricing. So you can do that. And the best values we see that one can get is when you combine both. You combine the product recommendation and you also combine the offer model. When you combine these two, really get a very good recommendation for a customer. It's a combination of offer and the product. Now, offer recommendation is very useful in the scenario of QSR, which is quick service restaurant, fast foods, right? So like you have Domino's, you have Pizza Hut, you have KFC, and all of them. They all work on offer. I mean, many of them have more than 200 offers at any point in time. Which offer makes sense for what customer? When you're trying to converse with them and nudge them, it makes sense to provide the best offer to them, right? That will most likely nudge them to come and do a transaction. Okay. Of course, you also have your predictive scores. So that was all about recommendations and product recommendation, offer recommendations, different algorithms that can be used. Now, predict really about trying to predict a customer's behavior, right? And typically what you find is, hey, what's the propensity new customer who's just done a shopping will repeat, or will repeat in the next 10 days, repeat in the next 20 days, right? Or there was a customer who shopped with us, but with us for last 1 year. What's the propensity that we can actually get them back to do another transaction, right? Or what is the propensity to buy a specific category? So these are all propensity models, right? And these are very useful. These are very useful, especially when you're looking at target right set of customers, right? Remember, we talked about the 5 Ws. So the first one was who. So many a times, this propensity scores are something that are very useful to select the who, right? Campaign. You've got your products, you've got your single view of customer, you know who to talk to, you know what to recommend, all of that. But you also need to decide the reason to talk, right? The reason to talk with a customer could be, hey, it is that person's birthday today. So I should engage with them. I should send out a message wishing them, or I should give them an offer or something like that. Or you want to have a conversation with the customer saying that, hey, your peers bought denims, right? Or you want to talk to your customers because they've already done a 10th purchase with you, right? So different reasons. There could be different reasons to engage with a customer. Well, these are nothing but campaigns, right? So typically you will see there are 3 kinds of campaigns. One is event. Event are essentially a personal event, could be a birthday, could be an anniversary, be a milestone, right? So these are all deterministic in nature, which is, they have happened in the past, they are happening now, right? Scores are so these are predictive, which is I'm saying that, hey, which is telling me that I should target this customer because this customer has a high propensity to repeat. in the next 20 days, something like that, right? Path is very interesting. Path says, I should talk to a customer because I know that there are other customers who have taken the same path and are ahead of the current customer so nudge this customer also to follow the same journey. So it's really compare multiple customers, right? And figuring out how to nudge the customer, right? So this campaign. Now, it's possible that on any given day and time, a customer, the brand can engage with the customer for any of these more than one reason. In that scenario, how do you ensure that you don't bombard the customer with messages, right? Or you don't over communicate, you don't do an over conversation. So that's why we have prioritize, right? You need to decide which is the campaign that you're going to lead with. For example, in this case, it says that each of them is given a score. So in this scenario, it's saying that, hey, if I need to talk to Greg Davis, I think I'm going to talk to Greg Davis with a message around driving repeat. Okay, it's possible that I may use the message of the birthday, but my leading campaign is repeat. That's campaign prioritization. Now, after you've done that, you also want to know whether the customer would be ready to see. If you think about communication, it's a two-way street, right? I want to talk to you, but I don't know whether you're ready to talk to me or not, or see the communication from me. So you really need to make sure that both the timing is right on both sides. So with campaign prioritization and everything else, we have talked about the first side, which is the brand side. But is the customer ready to receive the message right now, ready to have an engagement? So create models around that. You create models to find out what is the best time to talk to the customer, or where is the best day to talk to the customer. So all of these. So this ensures that the communication then or engagement is both ways, right? So that's what this good time selection is all about. And finally, governance. This is very critical. One of the important things about customer engagement is how do we ensure that we communicate with the customer at the right time. But equally important is when do we not communicate but stay silent, right? There's a penalty. I mean, we have all at the receiving end of too many SMS, too many messages from different brands, right? We more often than not we would like them to be silent and engage with us only when it makes sense. So there's a power of staying silent, right? So governance really enables any system to help you with that. So these are the different things that you need to bring together to have an hyper-personalized engagement with any of your customers. So I'm going to skip a couple of slides and then really give you a simple architecture, functional architecture of, this is a functional architecture of SOLUS, but it's very typical of any intelligence system, right? You will have a Centric, you have some kind of a data store. It doesn't have to be centralized, it could be fed, right? You'll have mechanism by which you can get data into that. You'll have engines, these are all your AI ML engines that are working using the data, giving product recommendation, offer recommendations, and different things. And finally, you will have you'll have a user interface that the user can look at. The administrators of the system or users of the system can look at the different insights. There are modules which will help you in actually engaging with the systems of engagement, right? So that's something that is a typical architecture, functional architecture of system like what I just talked about, which can help you in engaging with your customers in a very hyper-personalized manner, right? Now, why would you do all this? The main reason for doing all this, right, is of course you want to engage with the customer, you want the customer to purchase. But there are many other ways to do the same thing. But what we have seen is, anytime you've done this, anytime you've worked on doing a hyper-personalized engagement with your customers, there's a direct impact of about 5 to 7% to your top, right? That's significant, that's huge, right? So that is one main reason why you would want to do hyper-personalized engagement with your customer, if nothing else. Okay. Now, of course, there's one whole piece around how to measure whether what you're doing is successful, right? How do you, I mean, it's the whole area is called attribute. So how do you attribute, let's say a customer coming and shopping for something, value associated with that purchase? How do you attribute that to a specific campaign you've done, specific event that you have driven? So there's a whole science around that. That in itself will take probably 1 or 2 hours to even get the basics, right? But that's a very important piece of any kind of engagement like this, any kind of system like this. It needs ability wherein it can show that it's actually made a difference. It's actually value, and it needs to do it in a very statistically significant manner. So you will hear. I mean, in literature, you will hear a lot of phrases like large attribution, multi-touch attribution, first touch attribution. But there are many more than those. Okay. So that's really what I wanted to cover in this whole session. I know we have little over time, but happy to take questions. Thanks everyone for listening patiently.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
So, could you give your pointers for understanding